We should be good in a couple seconds here, Your Worship. We believe we've got it going.
Thank you.
We are all set to go. Sorry about the delay.
Okay, then, if I could get council to come on screen. And I'll start by saying thank you to our staff for troubleshooting that technical issue. I know that sometimes these things pop up and they can be very difficult, and especially when you're under the gun of a bunch of cameras looking at you while you're trying to do it. So we appreciate you getting things going for us today. With that, I will call to order this special session of council for this Tuesday, April the 19th, 2022. I will note that this is a virtual meeting, and as such, all rules of procedure, code of conduct, etc., apply to this meeting as if it were held in person. If during this meeting any member of council loses their connection or has a technical interruption, we will pause for a moment to allow that person to reconnect. But if they are not able to do so within a few minutes, assuming we still have quorum, we will continue on with the meeting. It is noted that the meetings are live streamed and recorded for viewing later as necessary. With that, we call the meeting to order at 6:40. We have an agenda before us. Are there any edits or amendments to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Townend, so moved, seconded by Councillor Porter. Thank you. And if there's no further comment, I will call the question. I will ask all in favor to raise their hands or yell out if they're not able to be on camera at the moment. And
aye.
1, 2. Okay, thank you. Right. Motion is carried. Thank you all. At this time, I will ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move forward to the business to be considered at the special meeting. Item 4.1 is the W.J. Henderson Recreation Pool update. I believe we have some staff here to make a presentation. Ms. McFarland, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank all of council for making themselves available for this special meeting. It's a very important topic, and I appreciate that you all are here tonight. We do have a brief presentation. I will ask Ms. Lamb to provide the presentation, and I believe Mr. Reniers will be speaking to some of it as well, and then we'll have questions afterwards.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Lamb.
I'm going to share my screen.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to council for attending the meeting. And we understand that this is a subject that has been on the agenda for quite some time in terms of the challenges and what we're currently facing with the pool. So without further ado, I'll jump right in. If we could have the next slide.
Still on slide 1.
I apologize. I'm not sure why it's not advancing for me.
Click on the other screen, Lori, on your second screen.
Okay.
Should work.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. So just a quick note, an overview of what we will review during our presentation tonight. We will focus on the current pool closure, the structural engineers report that we have received, interim service solutions, and providing an update regarding the community hub and the funding that was applied for. So we have prepared some recommendations and considerations for council to consider at the end of the presentation as well. So if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So as previously reported, the pool facility is old. It's out of date. It is 47 plus years old as of this year. We currently are experiencing quite a bit of failing as it relates to the infrastructure. It also doesn't meet today's accessibility standards and also has issues related to access to the facility that were previously reported to council. The facility and programming is maximized right now, allowing for limited growth. And with our growing township, the demand for services in the pool is increasing as well. So if we can see the next slide. So just referencing this information, the pool did close on March 9th. It originally closed due to water chemistry issues. Unfortunately, during the closure, we identified multiple infrastructure issues, including the Dectron unit, as well as pool basin cracking. Throughout the closure, contractors were brought on site and consulted with staff in order to review and address the issues. Despite several attempts to reopen the facility, critical infrastructure issues have forced an extended closure. Staff have contacted Roney Engineering to attend to the site to complete an assessment. Having previously completed assessments of the facility, Roney has a lot of knowledge and experience related to this specific facility. So before addressing or presenting details of the structural engineer's report, it is important to reiterate the infrastructure challenges that the township has previously shared with council. This includes that the deck slab is resting on the pool basin walls. This is impacting the integrity of the basin. The basin slab and sub base has been undermined. Cracks in basin walls and the floor have become a critical issue over the last year. The HVAC and air quality challenges continue. We have continued to have excessive water loss. And the repairs that were estimated a year ago, there was a report that was done that estimated quite a few repairs to the facility in excess of $320,000. Those are not considered in this report. So since 2017, we have, Phil has done some great work in the finance team to pull together some cost estimates for us on what we have spent. And since in the last 5 years, we have spent in excess of $420,000 on repairs. That is above and beyond what we would consider normal operating or maintenance of the facility. I can have the next slide. So figure 1. So just to reiterate here, the recent cracking in the pool basin led to staff contacting the structural engineer. In these photos, you can see in the deep end of the pool cracking width and lengthwise. So figure 1 is the width going from side to side of the pool. You can see a substantial crack. You can also see in the deep end in figure 2, the basin crack that's leading lengthwise from the shallow end into the deep end. You'll also note that the cracking is going in multiple directions. It's just not one long crack. There's T's, there's X's, there's spidering that's happening with the cracking. I will note that these pictures were taken just last Wednesday, so just under a week ago. If I could get the next slide. So figure 3 is the pool basin floor. This shows the sand from the sub base coming up through the crack. So that is a fine sand that is coming up. Figure 4 is a reoccurring crack in the shallow end of the pool. This crack has been repaired 3 times, and the last time being just a few weeks ago, and you will see it is already starting to crack again. These pictures are just a sample of the many cracks that are currently present in the pool basin floor and walls. The entire floor has cracking throughout the shallow end, the ramp going into the deep end and the deep end. There's also cracking on the walls as well. We have the next slide. So Roney Engineering completed an assessment and provided a detailed report that includes observations, analysis, implications, and options for the township to consider. The structural engineer identified that the pool cannot operate given the current cracking of the pool basin. Erosion is occurring under the pool basin slab. There's major water leakage happening at the top of the pool walls. The leakage is a serious concern. It's causing cracking due to erosion and water penetration, resulting in that erosion of the sand under the slab. This erosion is causing channels to form under the building, following the contours of the underlying bedrock. I will note at that point, though, that the structural engineer has no concerns related to the remainder of the facility and the foundation and the stability of the facility. It's strictly related to the pool. The concrete does have some strength, but it has reached a point of stress resulting in load redistribution, which in turn what is causing the cracking to spread. The basin slab is lacking uniform support, which is required to provide support of the weight of the pool, as well as the water and the occupants within it. Development of the cracks has resulted in significant breaches of the waterproofing of the pool basin, impacting the subbase. So the likelihood of further uncontrolled cracking is very high. So the implications of this current infrastructure failure is not good. The existing pool structure has failed, and unless repaired or replaced, is no longer suitable for continued use. So what are the options? Option A, there's 3 options provided in front of you. Option A, this repair is a reconsolidation and repair of the current basin. It involves injecting grouting beneath the pool slab. This would be done through drilling holes through the slab into the soils below, followed by an injection of material to fill the voids. This would reconsolidate and stabilize the remaining soils. We would then come through, fill the core holes, seal, and finish. The township would still need to repair all the cracks and ultimately restore the structural integrity of the slab. If corrosion of steel reinforcement is detected at crack locations, the steel would need to be removed and replaced. And the repairs at the interface between the top of the walls and the pool deck are required. That's that sample of the picture I showed you of the crack that was just repaired a few weeks ago. That is happening throughout the pool basin and is spreading. There would be new waterproof coating that would be required to be applied. And then additionally, all the other filling infrastructure related to the pool would need to be addressed. So this would be mechanical, deck drainage, accessibility, and any of the health and safety issues that have already been discussed. This is option A. Option B, this is just to remind you, ultimately the existing pool structure has failed. The structural engineer reiterated that in the report several times. The existing pool and deck may be removed for a new pool and deck. So what this would be is you take out the 5-lane 25-meter pool and you rebuild a 5-lane 25-meter pool and deck in its current location. The structure of the physical building remains as is. The change rooms aren't touched. The Dectron unit up top is not touched. Mechanical is not touched. This pool provides opportunity to incorporate design enhancements within the pool itself to meet current and future programming needs and to upgrade to modern standards, including the provision of accessibility features. So council could choose to go to a 4-lane pool and put a ramp in as an option, as an example. This would involve demolition of the current pool deck and concrete pool structure, removing the existing subbase down to material that they would consider sound. A new engineered filled subbase would be put in place to provide reliable support for a new pool structure. Again, it would not address all the other issues related to the facility. Option C is to decommission the pool and abandon pool services. This facility could be repurposed to an alternative use. Due to the compromised ground surface beneath the pool, though, we cannot just simply fill the existing pool basin. It is necessary to demolish the existing pool deck, construct structural steel or reinforced concrete suspended floor structure on new foundations. What you could repurpose this to, that isn't necessarily the topic that's being presented. That would require further consultation, but it could be repurposed. So Laura, if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So the following are the risks and estimated costs where possible for the 3 options. So the reconsolidate and repair option A It is likely that this would be 50 to 60% of the cost of a replacement pool as described in option B. This is a short-term solution that does not extend the life expectancy of the pool facility, nor does it address the ongoing operating and maintenance costs of maintaining a 47-year-old pool and operating a new one. It's a high-risk option. It is unknown how large the voids are in the subbase and the amount of material required to correct the failing subbase. Basically, in my discussions with the structural engineer, he referred to it as working blindly. The efficacy of this approach, spending significant resources on an old outdated facility, is also important to consider. There is uncertainty if this remediation will be successful, so there's no guarantees being given to us. It has been suggested that this does not represent optimum value over the long term. Therefore, as you can see on the slide, we have placed an X there saying that we're not recommending the reconsolidation and repair. Option B would be replacement of like for like. The cost estimates are unknown at this time. The replacement of the pool basement and deck would be for a similar service today's 5-lane, 25-meter pool. Future growth and development is not considered. And option B does not address other issues outside the basin. So aging change rooms, accessibility, the current size of today's facility versus the need and where we're going to be even in 5 years in terms of the level of service going to be required for the number of people. It doesn't address a lack of storage, or does it consider any future needs, health and safety, current building code, those types of deals. Again, all other failing infrastructure related to the pool would still need to be addressed, including mechanical accessibility and health and safety. Option C, to decommission and repurpose. This option is less risky than option A. It is significantly less expensive than A and B. It's estimated that it would be 2 to 2.5 million, exclusive of finishes, because we don't know what we would be repurposing to. The township would still be faced with consideration of building a new pool elsewhere or no longer being a community with a pool. I can have the next slide, Lori. Thanks. So within the structural engineer's report, has it been noted, and I'll just read from the slide, costs of maintaining, operating, and continuing to service this aged pool infrastructure is higher than the costs associated to a new facility. And so the significant investment necessary to undertake the necessary repairs to the existing pool structure may be very difficult to justify over the long term, particularly considering that the efficacy of such a repair is at risk. I thought that was very telling from his report, given the current situation and what council has been considering over the last few years with the reports from council regarding the community hub. So if I could have the next slide. Thanks, Lori. So as a reminder, I thought it important that council understand and that we remind you who's using the pool, how it's being used, how we're programming it, and who the participants are. So this information is mostly pre-COVID. The last few years with opening and closing and restricted capacities, those types of things, it's very difficult to get statistics from the last few years. But pre-COVID, the pool was programmed year-round, 7 days a week, 10 to 16 hours per day. Our goal was to return to this schedule as of March 28th, a few weeks ago. And unfortunately, with this current critical infrastructure failure, we were not able to reopen to that schedule. There is more than 4,000 participants per year in township programs. This does not include the rentals, the swim clubs, the schools, things of that sort. This is just our programs, of which 54% are township residents. This is based on 2018-2019 numbers. And based on the last census, this would be about 12.4% of the Loyalist population. Township programming. So this would include things like swimming lessons, leadership course, certifications, everything from learn to swim all the way to instructor courses. Includes fitness classes for all ages, adult swims, senior swims, parent and taught. We've just recently, we're implementing a baby and me program, all of those types of classes. The pool is home to the Ernestown Barracuda Swim Club. And I can say that they average approximately 20 hours a week of rental time in our pool, and they actually take their overflow to alternative pools throughout the region. They do not get enough time in our pool to substantiate the need of the club. They need to go elsewhere. That's telling in terms of the need for that swim club in this pool. Other rentals and users include school programs, including class programming, as well as extracurricular from the school, so the swim teams. We also do rentals with Special Olympics for their training programs, as well as private rentals such as birthday parties and things of that sort. At this time, staff are responding to multiple inquiries hourly. This is by phone, email, in person, social media regarding the current status of the pool and reopening. The office here at the WJ Henderson has really just turned into an answering machine for the pool at this point. So if I can have the next slide, Lori. In response to that and the number of people that are using our pool, with many residents looking for aquatic options, township staff have had initial discussions with potential partners who are willing to work with the township to assist with providing aquatic services to our residents in the interim. So staff are continuing to have these discussions and to refine the details. And in fact, we have another call tomorrow morning at 8:30. Options include sourcing pool time for such things as township programming, the Learn to Swim programs, which are very critical to our community. Time for our swim club to get to, how do we make up those 20 hours a week for those kids who participate in that program, as well as our other regular pool rentals. So moving on to the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Fund update, given the current status of the pool and the presentations to council last May and June, staff felt important to provide council with an update on this funding. In July of 2021, funding applications were submitted to both the new build and the retrofit. It was noted that the new build was the township's preference as directed by council. We are currently awaiting notification from the federal government. We did respond to some questions or additional information requests last fall. On April 13th, staff were informed that officials continued to diligently review and assess projects for eligibility and merit. Program administrators could not provide a more precise timeline for a decision. I will note, though, that staff will inform the funding program administrators of council's decision tonight, the outcome from our meeting this evening. So just a quick reminder on the retrofit versus the new build and the difference between the two funding streams. Retrofits are changes to an existing building or asset that seek to renovate, upgrade, or repair aspects of the building or asset in a manner that improves environmental outcomes. Retrofits must be to a facility that is accessible to the public and that will provide non-commercial services to the community. So the retrofit are projects that demolish up to 30% of an existing building's floor space and reconstruct, renovate, rebuild up to 30% of the building's baseline floor space. They're considered retrofit projects. So we are able, within the current location of the pool and the desire for the 8-lane 25-meter pool and a leisure pool, the township building a new pool facility in the current location of the pool facility today would be considered a retrofit. And if I could go to the next slide, I am going to ask my colleague, Mr. Renier, to speak to the financial slide that's before you.
Thank you. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, so this is just a brief bit of a financial update. If you remember back last June when we brought this, the first two columns there, which say new build and retrofit, we presented those last June prior to applying to the grants. So this update is we just wanted to add a third column due to the critical nature of the pool that we've called revised township funded. And it was really just to give a sense of what we'd be looking at to service the potential debt if we were not to get the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Grant funding, since we are at a critical nature if council were to go that route. So as you can see, the main difference is prior with the potential of the grant, we were projected to be able to finance the annual financial payment through existing means or savings. But as you can see now, without that grant, we would be looking at potentially approximately $400,000 after potential existing sources to fund that debt. And in terms of the 2022 general tax levy, that's just over 2% increase just to service that remaining portion of the annual financing. I do want to note that these project costs were the ones from a year ago. We do not have current up-to-date project costs, but from what we're hearing, it would be expected to be a 30 to 40% increase. So rather than 25 million, it's probably closer to just over 30 million, 31 million, that range. So that would significantly increase this as well. The other note to update is a year ago, on a 30-year loan through Infrastructure Ontario, we are looking at about a 3.1% borrowing rate. Currently now, as we all know, rates are going up. As of April right now, borrowing rate would be 4%. So it's almost gone up 1% in terms of borrowing. So that's not insignificant when you're looking at this amount of money to be financed. The other thing I wanted to just mention here, high level tonight, is that any potential borrowing doesn't happen in a vacuum. So if you remember back to capital budget time, we projected over the next 5 years, there's approximately in general rate, about a $32 million projected infrastructure gap. In addition to about the 7 million we have currently built into our 2022 budget with carry forward, that's about another, outside of the pool, there's about another projected 40 million in infrastructure gap over the next 5 years, sorry. So all that needs to be taken into consideration in making these decisions. Due to the critical nature of the time, you'll see in one of the recommendations, it is to bring back a more fulsome financial report. And with that report, we would be bringing back more debt projections and how that would affect our borrowing limits over the life cycle of it. And I'm here tonight to answer any further questions people may have, but that's just a really brief and high level sort of update to give council a sense of what we'd be looking at in terms of paying for this. Back to you, Ms. Lamb.
So before I get into the recommendations and read the recommendations, I think it's important to note that staff understand the challenges faced tonight, this is a critical issue, critical infrastructure for our community. It's a level of service that our community has become accustomed to. So as we were preparing the recommendations, we considered that. We also considered that the current structure itself is at a critical phase and cannot reopen as it is today. So the first recommendation before staff considers that staff be directed to close the pool until further notice, that we work with our regional partners to source interim aquatic solutions for township residents, and that we report back to council with updated retrofit costs and financial options for consideration for council. So that's in reference to what Phil had just mentioned about providing updated numbers. So we felt that this recommendation answers the need of trying to provide some interim service to our community, but addresses the age of the facility and the critical infrastructure. Another option for council this evening is that staff be directed to close the pool until further notice, and that we finalize the scope of work to make the necessary repairs to reopen the current pool. Issue appropriate tender documents and report back to council with the results of the tender. So this would be repairs to the basin as noted in the structural engineer's report, as well as all the other mechanical repairs and issues related to the facility that need to be addressed. The third option is that staff be directed to close the pool until further notice and not to offer any aquatic programming for the remainder of the year. So this is a shut it down, and that it would be considered in future years as to what the status of aquatic services or a pool in our community would look like. And that was our presentation for this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I might turn to Jenna or Lori or even Phil if I cannot answer that question myself.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Excellent report and difficult place to be in right now. Council, do we have questions for Ms. Lamb or any of the present staff? I'll go to the deputy. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this would be through to Ms. McFarland or Mr. Venier. The funding that we have already applied for, we've been working on percentages. So I just wanted to confirm, with the potential increased cost of construction right now, would that would the funding, if we were granted the funding, would it still be on a percentage of the cost to build? Or would it be a fixed dollar value that wouldn't take into account the increased costs?
Yeah, I can answer that through you, Your Honor. Under the GICV grant program, it was up to a maximum of $25 million, which is kind of where we were at prior to costs going up. So anything beyond that would not be eligible under that grant. The ceiling is $25 million under that grant program. And that's for both the retrofit stream and the new build stream.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll go to Councillor Porter.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure who can answer this, but when you talk about retrofit and you talk about a new build, I just want to get this clear in my head. There's two types of new build then. There's a new build in the existing structure, and there's a new option for a new build outside of that structure. Am I understanding that correctly? I'm trying to get the three different, I mean, there's four options really, right? There's the repair, the retrofit, or is that the same as a new build in the existing structure and a new build outside in a new location? Just trying to get that straight in my head.
Through you, Your Worship, I think I can answer this one. There's under the grant funding, there's the new build on the site, but in a different location. Under the grant funding, the retrofit stream is building a new pool in the current location of where the pool is. And then the retrofit that is identified in the engineer's report would be just replacing the current pool that we have with exactly the same size. The only thing really that would be replaced in that scenario is the actual pool and deck itself. The retrofit under the funding stream would be a new larger pool with the therapeutic pool as well. Does that answer your question, Councillor Porter?
It does, thank you, but it led me to another question in that in your recommendation, you're saying updated retrofit costs. So you would be bringing back something with both those retrofit options?
Through you, Your Worship, we would be bringing back costs for building the new pool that has been identified in the current footprint that's there. Those are the costs that we would be bringing back. We would also be bringing back for a new build in a new site, if council wished us to do that. I believe, if I may, part of when we were doing the two preferences, part of I believe council's wish to have the new build option was that we would be able to maintain the pool service while the new pool was being built in the other location. Unfortunately, with what has currently occurred, that option really isn't open to us anymore. So that's why in the recommendation, we identified that we would be bringing costs back to build in the old location.
And follow up, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when we're talking about retrofitting or building a new pool in the current location, and you had mentioned that our current pool facility did not allow us for growth and expansion of programs and servicing. So if we retrofit it, that would be the same thing then, right? Would it be the same thing? I guess is my question, is that it would not allow us to expand our service offerings or our growth of our facility in any way, the pool facility, that is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we do option 2, I believe it is in the engineer's report, then no, that would not allow us to do anything for growth. But if we do what is deemed retrofit under the funding program, then we would be able to allow for larger growth, and we would be putting in the 8-lane 20-meter pool and the therapeutic pool. That's what we would be moving forward with that one. I know it's confusing because they both say retrofit, but under the grant program, it's deemed retrofit because it's 30% of the building space. That's the only reason why it's deemed retrofit. What the engineer is saying in option 2 in his report, that's just taking out, removing the deck and the pool basin and replacing for exactly what's there now.
And in the retrofit then, or the new, build the new pool in the current facility, I'm going to simplify it by saying it that way. We would be able to build a bigger pool with more facility in that same area?
That's correct. It wouldn't, I mean, it would be in that same location, but it would be expanded. Like it wouldn't be right within that same envelope. It would be in that location, but it would be expanded.
Okay, thank you. Again.
Okay, if I can hopefully add some clarity to that, the options that are before us tonight, option 1 includes both the new build and retrofit options under the grant program that would be either a brand new pool at a physically different location somewhere else on that grounds, or the retrofit, which would be a brand new pool, but in the rough location of the current pool. That is both within option 1. Option 2, and I'm referring to that just in my own head at least, as new or fully renovated, as opposed to the retrofit that gets confusing because of the engineer's report. So option 2 is the retrofit back to what we have currently, with no updates to the change rooms and the accessibility and the air handling and all of that stuff that is necessary as well. And then 3 obviously is the close the pool and figure out if we're going to do aquatics in the future. And are there any other questions right now? And I have a couple. Do we have, looking at those options that the engineers presented us, I know that we looked at a little bit of information with regard to the timing of the under the grant application, how long it would take us to build a new pool. Right? Can you report on that? And can you give us an estimate on what that retrofit, engineered report retrofit concept, how long that would take as well?
Mr. Mayor, in terms of how long it would take under the grant funding to build a new pool, we're looking at 2.5 to 3 years to do that. In terms of the engineer's report in removing the current basin and deck and rebuilding in that spot, at this time, we do not have an estimation of how long that would take.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from council? I'm seeing no further questions. And, I know this is a topic of significant concern. We have recommendations before us, but I'll reach out to council to see if someone wants to put something on the floor at this time. Anyone wish to put forward a motion? Deputy, go ahead.
Move to receive the report with thanks and adopt recommendation number 1.
Adopt recommendation number 1. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Townend, thank you. Comments, mover?
Yeah, just a couple points. I like the idea of partnering as much as we can to be able to continue to provide the services to the residents and the users. I think that's critical to keep everybody engaged and active. The biggest concern, of course, is funding. So I know we definitely need grants to be able to pull this off, which means we've got some work ahead of us to try and attract as much grant money as we can. And along with the long-term funding plan, which will come with the next report, I'm sure. And as was mentioned in the report, some of the information that was provided tonight was gleaned from a previous report. So in the motion, it says that all of that will be updated and everything so that it's current, and we'll be dealing with today's needs, expenses, and also today's AODA requirements as well. And this leaves the option open for us to be able to expand the pool and build to the future needs. I mean, this pool is 47 years old. So when we build the next pool, whatever it's going to be, we have to take into account the next 40 years as well. And at the rate that the community is growing, that's going to be a definite consideration. So, and I personally believe that the pool is an important part of the community. It's well used, as it was mentioned tonight. And I know I work with people and different people that have lived here or moved here, and one of the drawing factors is the recreation in Lilas Township. And whether it's the ice, the fields, or the pool, it's very much used and appreciated. And so I think it's critical that we work as hard as we can to still maintain the status of a municipality with a pool.
Thank you. Seconder comment? Anyone else have comment? We'll go to Councillor Porter.
I do have a question for the mover and then a comment. So in that recommendation number 1, that includes updating costs for a new build as well, not just the retrofit costs?
To the mover, that was your intention?
Yes, and I was taking retrofit as the grant definition, which would be a new build in the current location as well. Okay. And then my comment is I totally concur with the deputy mayor. I think a pool has been a center point of our municipality as well for our programs, and it's really important to the community. I know myself, so many people that love having a pool in our municipality. It's well used, and I think the sooner we can bring resolution to this, the better.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Gordon, go ahead. Councillor,
sorry, I maybe it was mentioned there and I missed it, but these grants, what's the time frame for a yay or a nay on these things? These grants, or are we talking 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years, or what? I don't know.
Actually, I'll jump in on that one. I can tell you that when we first applied last year, we were told that we'd be looking at answers in the fall. Then, of course, came the election and things were delayed. I appreciate the fact that staff were able to get a response from staff within that department. I actually also reached out literally today to go through the political side of things and see if we could get any kind of further answer, and got basically the same answer that our staff got. So unfortunately, at this point, they're not giving us a timeline as to when we'll know whether or not we are deemed eligible for those grants. The one piece that I can add is that the ministry has already indicated it's going to open up for another round of grant applications in July of this year.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? No further comment? Back to mover? No? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the last item to be considered in open session. With that, we now do have a closed session. So I would ask for a motion to go into closed session to discuss an item which relates to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of lands and under solicitor-client privilege. Could I have a motion? Councillor Buderick, so moved. Councillor Porter, you're seconding. Thank you. Any comment? I will call the question. Oh, hang on. Mr. Silver's got his hand up before I move forward.
It's not a council comment, but I will need about 5 minutes, Your Worship, because there are a couple of invited guests for the closed session, and I said that I would call them before we start.
Understood. Thank you. And before I call the vote, because as I'm fairly confident I know the answer to the vote, I will remind council that we do have another Zoom link that we can utilize to go into that. So if we give it about 5 minutes and then go into that, we should be able to get set up for our closed session. And then at the end of our closed session, we would be coming back to this open session to just to finish off the meeting at that point. So with that, I will call the question on going into closed. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are moving into closed. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, you need to leave this special council meeting and join the closed session link.
So who would place the land value? Certainly it's more than
Madam Clerk, Councillor Buderick has indicated he's having trouble getting in again.
Just looking to see. I know he was in because he had issues. Let me just resend it to him.
And I'm not seeing Councillor Porter yet. This is mostly procedural at this point to finish up the last few pieces. We do have quorum. Right. I think we'll get going.
And to them, your worship. Oops, I think Mike's there.
There we go. We have 5. We have 6. Right. Just missing Councillor Porter at this point. Right. Anyway, at this point, we come back to Rise and Report. And we report that we had a discussion with regard to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land with solicitor information provided and direction to staff was provided. I don't believe I need a motion to that effect. So at this time, I need a motion for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Townend, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Thank you. Any comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried, which brings us to adjournment until the call of the chair, and we are scheduled for a council meeting next Monday. Right. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Deputy, seconded by Councillor Parks. Thank you. Any comment? Call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending the special meeting this evening, and we'll see you all next week.